But the core update is a garbage sweeper. Most of the sites have had these issues for years. Most of these issues are really big, but they just left them because Google never cared. It's very rare that core updates are affected by things that are obscure. It's almost always like main technical issues the site's not addressing. And I said my theory is it costs Google a lot of money to crawl and index, so they just want to take down the sites that they don't want to be bothered with anymore because of that.
You have mentioned that Google AI Overview essentially do what Google penalize others for scrapping and summarizing content at scale.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They're totally doing what they tell other people they can't do. Google has come out and said all AI content straight out of the box is low quality. If they have 1 million pages that all have the same basic entity structure, why would they put you in there? And since AI content can never write outside of what it's trained on, it will always have the entity structure of what already exists.
Welcome back to the Agency Insider Show. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal, and today we have someone I've admired for years, Kristine Schachinger. Kristine has over 2 decades of experience in SEO, technical architecture, accessibility, site recovery, and large-scale troubleshooting. And she's worked with Fortune 500 companies and high-traffic publishers. The situation where SEO stops being theory and become life or death for business. Kristine, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
So you have seen SEO evolve from the earliest days to now. What first drew you into the technical side of the SEO rather than the content and the marketing side?
I mean, what have I seen change?
No, what drew you into the technical SEO side?
What do I do on the technical SEO side? Sorry, something's happening in my headphones.
What I meant is that you do technical SEO more, right?
Yes, I do both, but
So,
yes, yeah, more in content.
so you are more in technical or more in content?
More technical. I do a lot of site
Yeah.
recoveries and I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
as a
So,
front-end
right, you are
dev.
famous for that. So my question was that usually when people go into SEO, they either choose content or marketing, but what pulled you towards technical SEO?
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, there was a thing in my headphones that cut out.
Yep.
I started as a front-end dev and designer. I actually went to art school and I was a sociologist by education when I graduated college, which meant there were no jobs for me whatsoever. So I signed on the paper for a designer and someone to do HTML, which I didn't know at the time. And but there weren't a lot of people who did websites. It was early aughts, early 2000s. So they hired me, and I learned how to code. So when I uh, for years added skill sets. So I did also usability, conversion optimization because of my design side, and then I coded by hand for probably about 2011 or 12 was when I stopped doing that because sites just had either internal to a company, you do it. But other than that, people are using WordPress. So WordPress kind of took over. But I could still use my skills to audit the sites and the sites, the way the site was coded, the way it was appearing to Google, the way the site could crawl it. And so that's kind of been my focus because I've done a lot of site recovery. And most site recovery is technical. There are site recoveries that are content oriented, but most based in technical. And also, if a site can't be indexed and crawled and indexed properly, then it doesn't matter how good your content is because Google won't place it well. So that's kind of my focus. I do all of it, but that's just my focus because it's easier for me and I like going into the puzzle piece of it. Trying to figure out what's not working on a site technically is often very different based site to site. So
Okay, so I think what you call is it as a forensic SEO, right?
yes, yeah, it's
Yes,
following.
yes, yes.
I did a talk at Brighton SEO San Diego 2 years ago about
Okay.
following anomalies, which is where that comes from, forensic SEO. So,
Okay.
like one time I wrote about this on LinkedIn this week. There was a client who was going live with a migration that we did, and I asked them to make sure I crawled it before we went live, and they didn't. And then I crawled it and found out that 900 pages were blank to Google. You could see it in the browser fine, you could see it in the tools fine, but the pages were actually blank to the Google bot. And this was one of the real weird ones. So first you think, oh, JavaScript, right? They must have used JavaScript and it's rendering the page in a way Google can't read it. No, not
Right.
JavaScript.
Okay.
Also, because Google doesn't interact with the page, if you put in content based on interaction, then it also will not see that. That was not it. So I'm so tired. I'm like been looking at this. And they launched on a Friday, which I always say never launch on a Friday. So it's like Friday, Saturday, like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning or something. And I'm like, I've got to fix this because this is launched, right? Google's crawling 900 pages of their main content, their main traffic, getting nothing. So I did put my head down as I was loading a page in Web Developer Tools, and I noticed browser console messages, which had only shown 4 errors, was going 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 90,000 errors and dropping to 4. And that was because there was a browser console message that had been coded wrong. There was an error and it created a loop. So as they tried to load the page, the bot, it got the loop, 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 and it just abandoned it. And it would drop to 4. So if you just looked at it without catching in that process, you would not have
You can't
caught
follow.
why the 900 pages are blank. So those are the kind of things that make it interesting and why I call it forensic SEO. So did the great Alan Bleiweiss, who passed away this summer, or maybe early fall. I don't remember the exact date. I think September. But he was the one who coined that term first. So I'm like, yes, I love that because that's exactly what we do. Because when you're auditing
Right.
sites, you're not just looking at what a tool might look at, but you're catching things like that. So.
Right. So, so I want to understand the agency application here. So when you walk into a site recovery situation that another agency failed to solve, and I know you have been into this multiple times, what's the most common blind spot you find in how agencies approach the problem?
One, I find that agencies and consultants work differently, right? So I call myself a concierge consultant. I'm currently working with a company where I brought in a fractal CMO because we needed someone to manage process and projects. And it recommended somebody for them to hire. We've changed our tool set. We've done things like that. Agencies are more about coming in, assessing like content needs and things of that nature, and developing a program for the company to continually grow. But that also means sometimes they don't do things like site auditing. And so I always start with a site audit because I want to make sure I know where we're going to put your money and your time, right? Because if I start with content, because yes, content is needed, but I haven't looked to see if the site can be crawled and indexed properly, then like I said, that doesn't matter. Like one site dropped 90%. We're sure that they had a devaluation from Google. They didn't. They had a technical issue. They had in the header area, the head tag in the code, they had something that broke the code. Google automatically closed it at the error. And then so it didn't see the CSS, it didn't see the JavaScript, it couldn't render the pages. If Google can't render your pages, then they drop you out of the index, right? That is something someone like me looks for from day one. It's not always something that agencies look for. Agencies really should hire auditors. Of course, that's what I do, but I'm not promoting. I'm just saying like auditors to audit sites for them first, because it's a separate paid process. It shouldn't be part of a incorporation. I know some use it as a loss leader, and that's fine. But they definitely should have an audit first with someone who's experienced at auditing to tell them where their deficiencies lie so that they make sure that if they do have a major technical issue or some sort of other issue that's causing their content not to be read properly, then they have identified that and are working on that first so that they can get big gains, instead of just like modest gains from the content, because not all of it's being properly read. You're not getting the gains you thought you'd get. So I think that's the difference. I think we work at a different level, but I also do mass content production. So if I need to do that, I will, talk to one of my friends who I know has an agency that does that and does it well, and I'll have them brought in and do the project. So.
Okay. And what is your tool stack when you do technical issue analysis?
Mine's very small. I use SiteBulb, and a lot of people don't know about SiteBulb, which surprises me. It's very low cost. I don't know exactly what it costs right now, but I think it's like
I know
35.
I am a user,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 35, 40 a month. And it gives you these
Right.
great images that you can easily, and PDFs that you can easily use to put into a report. Um, and then Screaming Frog. My Screaming Frog's my down and dirty tool, right? So if I
Yes.
need to easily see and sort things like how much JavaScript content difference, like is the raw HTML showing this much content, JavaScript showing this much, I just have a table in there that I can sort, by percentage of content change or
Right.
percentage of word change. I can look at that. Also, their 3D visual sitemap is fantastic. Have you used that before? And Screaming Frog?
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's
I
yeah,
just had a look. I don't do daily. I mean that much, but yes, my team does.
it's awesome because it's like if people haven't seen it, it gives you a 3D map, like a big sphere of all your pages, and it shows if they're green or red. And red means it's a stop point for the bot. Not, it may not be a bad reason it's red. It could be canonicalized or redirected, but it's red or green. Well, if I do a 3D site sphere and it's all red, and I show that to a client in an audit, they don't need to know anything else. They just see that much red and they're like, ah, oh my gosh, what's wrong? You know, like, okay, here's what's wrong, or here's what's okay, but we want to improve the internal link process so you have more green passages, right? So that's one of the great things about them. So they're both great tools for different reasons, but monthly cost on those for the entire year, if I break down Screaming Frog, it's like $300 a year now. So it's like $60 a month for those.
It's
Um,
not. It's peanuts compared to what you can do with those.
yes, exactly. And then I use Majestic for links, link evaluation. I would like to use Ahrefs, but unfortunately for me as a solo consultant, it's just gotten too expensive for what I need out of it. Like I used to have a $99 membership, which was fine, and I could get enough data that was meaningful. But now I would have to spend like 250 or 300
$300.
a month. Yeah, and it's just for me, unfortunately, I could still get all that data from the other tools. It's just not as readily available, and it's I don't have $300 a month to just
Right.
for one or two clients a month because just a solo. So the max I'm going to have is 5 clients a month. So I can't do that. I don't use SEMrush. I'll use a client's version. It's not really a tool I found to be highly accurate. Um, it depends on their data set. So if you have smaller sites, a lot of times the data will be wrong. I looked at a site that was only 3 months old in SEMrush, and I knew because I had the analytics data had 1 million visits, and SEMrush had it down at 10 because it wasn't in its panel, right? It wasn't really aware of it yet. So it's sort of that stuff. So it's good for like quick checks, but I won't pay them a membership for it. So that's really about
Right.
it. SEO Gets, really, really good tool. It's There's new tools that extend your GSC capabilities to like almost an analytic level. So there's SEO Gets and SEO Stack. SEO Gets will give you really good looks at your content, how it's performing, how you're doing. Like it'll group content together for you automatically, so you can see like I'm working with a lawyer. And we're like, how are their malpractice pages doing? And immediately I can see the clicks and the impressions just for those pages or the URLs themselves. Also, over time, it'll show you by week how many pages, how much traffic that page is getting in a whole big graph, which has like differentiating colors. So it's real simple to look. It's excellent. It also shows you what's being indexed by Google at 2,000 pages a day. It's just really good monitoring tool, but it's really good for going and checking content. And then SEO Stack does similar things like that, but also adds a lot of information, sort of analytic type information to your analysis.
Okay.
Both of those are super cheap. So under $100 a month for all four of those.
And I'm sure inspect element is one of the things where you catch some of these which these tools can't catch.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, and
Okay.
I have a lot of extensions in my browser.
Okay. Now, now let's talk about the AI and real deal of AI and SEO. One of the favorite topics of all my shows talk. So you have coined the term summarization engines, right?
Yeah, hallucinogenic summarization engines. Yeah.
Yes. So instead of AI search to describe what's happening with Google AI overview. So that's not just semantic. So there's a strategic distinction there that most agency owners probably haven't internalized, I'm sure. So can you walk us through why that framing matters for how agencies should be advising their clients right now?
So it's really important. Now, just to give a little background, I was writing about Google's first large language model, BERT, in 2018. And they weren't calling it an LLM at the time, but that's what it was. But about how it changed the processing of language, because Google used something called NLU, natural language understanding, um, until 2018, and then moved to NLP, natural language processing, which is much more robust. So BERT changed everything in the natural language model industry, not ours, but it disambiguated the word from the sentence. So it used to be they'd have to read the whole word in the sentence and understand the sentence and be able to understand. Now they could just predict what word would go in an empty spot, which is what OpenAI based their entire first ChatGPT on. So they had a paper. Everyone should look it up. It's a really great paper. I know I'm a geek. Like I have a favorite paper, but it's like making dilettantes out of debutantes or debutantes out of dilettantes. It was written by Google Research, and it was about how basically unknowing the engines are about what they're looking at. And it's just a very interesting paper. But OpenAI, Sam Altman himself, said that they based everything off that paper. So if you want to read the origins of where it came from, it would be from there. And then, so I'm sorry, I'm getting to it. I'm not trying to be too long-winded. So I also started going to DEF CON and Black Hat, where they have people like NVIDIA gave a talk 2 years ago on how the models work with a flow diagram. So like I've given friends in the industry the flow diagram in the talk. And it tells you how they do it, where they do it, how they weight it, everything like that, right? Because they were talking about attack surfaces. So my understanding of OpenAI when it came out was probably a little more ahead of other people's, because that's the first time most people in the industry had heard of it. But there's a lot of things that people think are new. So I don't like the term GEO. It's because we're not doing optimization for a generative engine. That's called training, and they do tokenization for that, right? So you'll hear they trained on 1 trillion tokens. That doesn't mean 1 trillion words. That can be breakdowns of words, right? Disambiguation will have multiple tokens in there, right? So the optimization you're really doing is for the search engine that the generative engine uses to ground its searches so it doesn't say silly things. So like Google last year, I think it was last year, could have been this year, I forget. They had put out their engine to the public, right? It wasn't just in labs anymore. And one of the first things that the news saw that it did was say, hey, if you have kidney stones, drink a gallon of your own urine. And then it said, if you want to keep your cheese from sliding off a pizza, glue it, right? And that's because that first attempt at the AI overview did not have the citations to ground the predictive text engine. So all it is, I mean, very simplified, there's a lot of math to it, but is a predictive probabilistic text engine. So it's like, hey, the quick brown fox, what word goes here? Oh, we've trained and we know jumps is the most common version, and jumps over the lazy dog, right? That's how it writes that sentence. There's also a thing called temperature where you can like lessen, take a lower probability and put it in there. And the engines also do that. So we're talking about AI search, not when, let's take this out of just ChatGPT. AI search with ChatGPT and all these models is that they use the predictive text engine. But if you and I put the same prompt in, we may get different answers. We're not going to necessarily get the same citations because they aren't doing this for, they're not using their citations like Google would for search, right? They're using it to ground their predictive text model so it doesn't write crazy stuff, right? Because otherwise it would just go off the rails. It's like, I've seen this a million times. It doesn't have anything to do with what you asked me, but I've seen it a million times, so that's the words I'm putting in that sentence. So yes, you do need to be in the models because people are using them for search, sadly, because the newest model of ChatGPT is wrong 35% to 48% of the time. They've stopped trying to be factual. Their first model was only wrong 16% of the time. So a lot of people in the industry think they're getting more correct. They're not, they're getting worse. Hallucinations cannot be fixed. There's a paper, I think it was from Apple, that this is based on a math issue, a math problem. So they can't fix it because it's working as it's supposed to. All it was supposed to do is like summarize text. It wasn't necessarily supposed to be actual or factual, right? So OpenAI has changed it to contextuality is what they're looking for, not facts. This is in their documentation. So they didn't mean it to be a search engine, right? Just ChatGPT needs somewhere to go to make $1 trillion because the industry needs to make $1 trillion a year by 2030, right? They're making 50 billion right now. So they needed something. So he just throws stuff at the wall. What sticks? What can we make money off of? So now they're doing AI search, right? But like I said, all of those use search engines to ground their citations, to give them the citations, to help with quality, to help with information. Perplexity uses Google's rankings as part of its pullback for citations, but they don't use ranking signals. There's no such thing as ranking in an AI search, not AI overviews or AI mode either. They do use quality signals from SEO. So to determine quality documents to pull back to summarize from, then they need to have that, the SEO has to be strong on a site. And people are like, well, it's not in the top 10. That's right. They're not using ranking signals. Perplexity uses them, but nobody else does. They're just using it to pull back quality documents. The other thing is when people are like, oh, we have visibility or citation was pulled like in these visibility trackers. And I know people are just trying to do something to help people understand that world. There isn't a visibility tracker that can really accurately depict where you are because it's not a ranking. It's just a citation they show you. So Google could pull back. They originally in Google Labs would show you all the citations. So you would get 100 citations for one article. Now you see what, 5, 4, 3, right? Those aren't the only documents Google pulled back to write that article to make sure it's more correct. They might have 100 or 200. So when you put in a prompt and I put in a prompt in the exact same prompt, often you notice you get different citations, some of the same, some different, because it's just pulling in randomly others from the large pack of items to pull back. So to boil this all down, agencies need to know you get almost no referral traffic from large language models unless you're e-commerce, because the finishing of the journey for the buyer has to be on the website. But Google might be changing that, might be changing on site, which I don't get, because if people don't go to websites, websites don't stay alive, and then neither does Google. So I don't know why they're trying to usurp all of it. But that was in our last week. There was an article came out last week. But anyway, so they don't get a lot of traffic. You're not doing anything gravely different. So the difference for people like, oh, it's so different. It's not. Like fan out query, people also asked 2015, right? Natural language processing, 2018 BERT, right?
Right.
Semantic understanding, 2011 Hummingbird. So all these things that passages, Cindy Krum wrote a lot about it, 2019, I think. That's chunking. So all these things that people have applied new terms to because it's new to them, Google's been doing for a decade or more, right? So you know, sometimes a couple of years, but there's very little that's actually new. You just, a lot of SEOs didn't know about it. So it was already affecting them. They just didn't realize it was affecting them. So, and also chunking and things like that are in accessibility standards since like 2005. So again, these are not new. So what people need to do is really strong, good SEO, really clear semantic breakdown of their content, you know, making sure you have your headers, which people have often ignored.
Right.
Yeah, knowing that they crawl you differently. So the learning model is not trying to get all your content and regurgitate it, because it's not a Google. It was not designed to do that. This is an application that they made, but it's not made for search. They didn't develop ChatGPT to be a search engine, right? They just created a search engine out of ChatGPT. Google created Google out of a search engine. So even AIO and AI mode, they all run on the same indexes that regular organic does. The only difference is, again, they don't have ranking signals. So, but they do something called neural matching, and I don't know that officially they're using the neural matching algorithm in AI overview and AI mode, but they do use it in Google organic, and it is the similar concept. And Matt, what that means is most people don't know that the last sort in your rankings is not your ranking factors; it's your neural matching. So Google will apply the ranking signals to order the page, right? And then it'll go to neural matching, which is the query against the content of the page. And it'll determine if this one's more relevant than this one. So maybe you were 1 in the ranking signal order, but it pushes this other one up to number 1 in the query match to the page content. And that's neural matching. It's topics and concepts. So they're using that in AI overviews and AI mode. So you have to be really good about knowing your entities, which are just nouns, right? But know which entities Google is using, and there are tools to do that. I know Dixon Jones, who has InLinks, which is a really good internal linking tool. He has a new one, but I can never remember how to say it. It's a way top.
Starts with
Something.
W.
Yeah, it starts with W.
I
And
think
that's,
ways or something, right?
yeah. So I feel bad. I'm sorry, Dixon, if you hear this. I just can't remember how to pronounce it. But look up Dixon Jones and you'll see he talks about it. But that also helps you with your entities. So your entities are things that Google knows and has already defined for natural language processing. So for example, everything in Google is math, is a number, right? So if I iced and T, right? And Google puts that into a vector database, and it says, oh, ICE and T numerically and mathematically are very closely related. They're used often when we train on text, right? If I say chocolate tea, they're probably not related all that often, but maybe sometimes. So they're going to be much farther away in the database, right? So mathematically, they're farther away. So it knows that these terms are used together, right? And there's other things Google has talked about over the years, which also indicates that they use this algorithmically. So, so ice and tea are used together. So if I'm going to mention iced tea, I want to make sure those words are close together in the sentence structure, because we know Google knows that as a known entity. Whereas if I put chocolate tea, I'm gonna have to convince Google that that means something. So I might have to mention it more, explain it better, do more documents on it, things of that nature. I hope I'm not getting too off the track. It's early here. So basically, you have to do just to really seriously. John has been saying this. I know some people are distrustful of Google, but do really good SEO, do really strong content. Make sure you know your entity structures and the queries people are using to find your site. Like Sitebulb and Screaming Frog will both give you your entire 16-month history of query terms that people have been using to find you, which is so much better than a tool that is guessing what terms might be useful, right? And this is also how you could learn. Like when I worked at Zappos, they first launched these shoes called Aqua shoes, and suddenly found their data. Everyone was looking at water shoes, and I don't know if it's where you're at, but where we're at, that's water shoe is something you use to walk through the water when you hike, right? And that's what they were, but not just those. There's other ones, but anyway. But so they learned from their data that water shoes was much more important. So they started creating water shoe pages. And those are the ones that are the most highly trafficked. So you want to look at your terms and know what people are actually looking at to find you. And when it comes to large language models, you definitely want to be mentioned, but that doesn't require you to do anything special except to make sure that your data, your content is available to their crawler, that you are in their training, that you are visible. Brand SEO, digital marketing is probably the most important thing for visibility in large language models because it's looking around the web to find you. So if it sees you more often than somebody else, you're more likely going to be what it mentions over somebody else or something else.
Okay. Now, so here's a scenario. Let's talk about AI and content a bit before we go into more depth into it. So, uh, an agency owner has a prospect who's getting 80% of their traffic from informational content that's now being summarized in AI overview. Now, the prospect wants to double down on that content strategy because it works before. So, how do you have that conversation without losing the deal or sounding like you are fear mongering?
I I think that you just have to talk to them honestly about it. I think that clients appreciate honesty and authenticity. I tell them, first of all, we don't have to worry about geo because it's like if you have local search or local e-commerce or news, they're all slightly different and focused differently, but they're all SEO. And they're always relieved by that because they're like, oh, great. Oh, cool. I don't have to learn this whole new thing and invest in a whole new thing. But when it comes to their actual content, I'm honest with them that they might lose traffic, especially news sites, based on these overviews. So unfortunately, there's no easy answer other than you have to diversify, right? So I talk to my clients now about hiring, an agency if they're, mid-size or large, that's going to help them create YouTube videos and YouTube shorts. And if that's appropriate for the business, not appropriate for all, but for most, getting on the different social medias, having a social media manager, because that's often overlooked. But now that's a lot of where your traffic might come from because, as you said, they're getting that AI overview, that AI summary. So it is really hard for news publishers. There's really not an easy answer for them except making sure that you're being found in Discover, that you have them following you in Discover. Google now has a new thing for desktop where you can follow your favorite news sources and they show up in a carousel with others. Newsletters, emails, those are still high converters, but it's just not straight organic. And people in SEO need to widen their skill set to make sure they understand how all that integrates in. So if something goes out on Twitter, there's a fire hose to Google, right, for that piece of content. If you want to show up in the top 10, not top 10, I'm sorry, top page of the page, there's something called the hidden gems algorithm. That's where Quora, Reddit, LinkedIn all are. So if you want someone to get ranked for things, have them right on LinkedIn, right? Because it could show up there. Now check first if there's a LinkedIn spot or a hidden gem spot on that page that you're trying to rank in. Also, page design differs based on type of query, type of information. So informational queries, sure, some of the short term are going to have the AI overview, but a lot are not. So find spaces of content where maybe they're not showing an AI overview for everything, right? And there are trackers that different companies have tools that are tracking like which spaces have AI presence and don't have an AI overview presence. I know Mark Traffic and SEO Clarity, I believe they told me they have one. I'm pretty sure Ahrefs have one. So find pages that don't have that AI overview in them. Another weird thing that they're doing in mobile is the AI overview expander doesn't expand the AI overview. It takes you to mobile. It takes you to AI mode, which I personally hate because I don't use AI overviews a lot, but I may be trying to just get a clip for a client or something, something I already know, and I just want an easy summary. And then I'm like trying to expand it, and it's like, now you're in AI mode. And I'm like, well, what? I didn't want to be in AI mode. I just wanted to look at the rest of that. But be aware that that's happening, that you may be having clients that are pushed off and into. Now, there's supposedly a change coming to the page design they're testing called Web Guide that everyone should look up. And that's a much more traditional page. If you go look at Bing and how Bing handles news and information, it's much different. So Google, I do for our podcast every week, I do a grid of news stories. And I always go to Bing. I don't bother with Google because Bing has the news stories at the top. Sometimes it's AI generated, sometimes it's news, sometimes it's combo. But they have a blurb about the article and a definite link to the article and an AI summary. So you're getting the news and the publications are showing and they're getting the click. Whereas in Google, it's AI overview with a tiny little clip that most people don't even know is a link and also didn't link to those sites until recently, was linking back to Google. Like once you got in the AI overview, they didn't let you out. So, and I don't have the answer to this. I don't know what Google intends to do if they destroy these sites because I work with recovery, right? I know how little they can lose for how short a period of time before they have to lay off people or start looking at going out of business. So when you're taking this traffic, and they are taking this traffic no matter what Google says, because there's been so many tests we've reported on our show that that they've done, like Kevin Index done test and gosh, who else? Anyway, I can't think of right now the names, but all the big companies that we know that track these things, they're showing that there's a decline, and the sites are saying there's a decline. So Google's saying there's not a decline; it's just untrue. So.
Okay. Okay. Now, you also mentioned that Google AI overview essentially do what Google penalizes other for, scrapping.
So what now? I'm
Right.
sorry, it cut off for just a second. I'm sorry.
So you have mentioned that Google AI overview essentially do what Google penalize other for scrapping and summarizing
Oh,
content at scale, right?
oh yeah, 100%. They're totally doing what they tell other people they can't do.
Now, from an agency strategy perspective, how should we think about building business on a platform that's increasingly cannibalizing the very traffic it promises to deliver?
Um, well, you're not. I mean, there's two things. One, you can just hold out for hope because this industry is not doing well, right? So in our industry, there's a lot of hype around AI. I follow the leaders in the AI industry. There's a guy, Gary Marcus, who's one of the like originators of modern LLMs. He's really good to follow because he's really honest about where the industry is, good and bad. But Lassoon from Meta just left Meta to go start something else because he thinks LLMs are dead. Right? Now, this doesn't mean Google and Bing are going to get rid of them, but 90% of all projects for next year have already been canceled. The costs are so high for energy that Facebook is getting 3 nuclear reactors. Meta, I should say. I don't know how I feel about Meta owning 3 nuclear reactors. I'm not really comfortable with it. Microsoft is getting nuclear reactors, right? The power needs of this are so insane. One Sora video for 3 minutes and the person who wrote the article is in Germany. The entire electricity for a German household of 4 for a day, right? So the power needs are out of this world. Hallucinations can't be fixed. They haven't found a real market for it that's willing to pay for it at the level that they need to pay for it. And it went from needing 800 billion a year last year to break even to a trillion a year by 2030 to break even, maybe 3 trillion. So they don't have a market that's paying any money. They're only making 80 billion in revenue, or 50 billion in revenue. And that could be a little older stat, so maybe 80 billion or 100 billion now. It doesn't matter. They still, as an industry, would have to make 3 trillion to break even. That's not to make money. So one, I wouldn't put a ton until next year is settled out of money into the AI portion, right? Because if this all collapses, then you'll have built a whole future on something that doesn't exist. Also, if you want to be realistic about it, most sites only get 1 to 2% referrals from large language models, right? That's
Right.
it. So you have to figure out how to be visible in places where you're not now. And that means using maybe possibly, it depends, it totally depends on your business, but getting on, like say your local site, getting on local news, right? That's a video that's
Okay.
going to go out there. It's going to live on another site, right? So you need exposure and visibility outside just your site, because they're going to train on your stuff. But when it comes to news and stuff, it's a little harder for them to keep up. So if you can get your information out there on other websites with partnerships, I don't mean with buying links or selling content, but I mean like legitimately get interviewed, get an audio interview, get a paper interview, turn that into 12 pieces of content, right? Turn it into a reel, a LinkedIn post, a Reddit post, whatever, right? But legitimately, people can tell inauthenticity and they hate it. But unfortunately, there's no easy answer for that, because but the best answer is you need to monitor the market legitimately. So find the real people in the industry on LinkedIn who are the researchers, the academics, the people that are running it. Some guy just main researcher at Google just wrote a whole post on LinkedIn yesterday how they left because they find this all unethical, right? So, and there's a lot of court cases still going on about all the training they did where they legitimately stole people's content, and people argue about that, but they stole it. And some are winning, right? So there's no regulation on this market. It's early on, so everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, the sky's falling." I was too in the beginning, but now that I've watched it progress and I read the researchers and the academics and the people that are running it, I notice that it's a very unstable industry that is not a definite future. So be wary of people who are telling you it's a deaf future, it's the only way it's going to go, and plan for what's going on right now. You need to be seen, you need to be visible, you need to expand your reach outside of normal, just organic. But on the other side, you don't need to put all your money into that. SEO is still referring, organic SEO is still referring probably 80 to 90% of your organic traffic, right? From just Google. And then if you add Bing in there, probably 95%. So are you going to put all your money into a possible field that may disintegrate in a year or two on its own weight? And or are you going to just prep there in case you need to build, but stick with what's really bringing you in the money, which is 95% of your organics coming from Google and Bing?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll move to our next segment, which is
Yeah.
why AI content is not a great idea. Now, I want to approach this from the agency economic angle because there's enormous pressure right now to use AI to scale content production and compete on pricing. Now, you have made the case that AI content is fundamentally detectable because AI can't create, it can only predict the most likely next word. But agencies are being told by tool vendors, conferences, speakers, and even the competitor that Google can't tell. For agencies owners listening who are getting conflicting information, what's the evidence-based framework for thinking through this claim?
The evidence-based framework is one. Google has come out and said all AI content straight out of the box is low quality. That came from John and Gary, and I believe also Danny. And it is. And the reason is, and also there's an algorithm at Google, it's patented, so people look it up, but it looks at all the pages in a topical vector and their entities, right? So topical vector, let's just say is coffee, and it's like Arabic coffee, right? And all these sites mention that, right? Well, if they have a million pages that all have the same basic entity structure, why would they put you in there? And since
Okay.
AI content can never write outside of what it's trained on, it will always have the entity structure of what already exists, right? So you're not adding anything new to the conversation. Gary East said at the beginning of this year that originality is your like biggest thing you need to do this year, authenticity. Now that doesn't mean you have to write something crazy out, out here like totally new. But it means like when I'm working with a lawyer, I want someone with a legal background to write it. It doesn't have to be a lawyer, but just someone who writes with the terms that a person in the law will write with, but from their own perspective. And jobs for writers went up 20% last month on LinkedIn. So it seems like there's actual evidence that companies are starting to realize that AI content isn't great content. Also, AI content for ads converts lower. That's a study that was put out. I think you can find it on Search Engine Land. So it converts lower. Google can't find any real reason to want to index it, right? Because there's nothing new in it. It's all the same. If I'm Google and I have a billion pages on heart attacks, do I need a billion and one that's on your site just because you think your site's good? I don't. They do have a manual action against it. I have worked with sites to try to recover them from a manual action for spam, for AI generated content. They're also, Google had an algorithm before ChatGPT ever came out because of Jasper. that actually detected AI use for spun content for stealing from sites. So you know how affiliate sites will spin all the content, right, and put it on their own site of a site that's well ranking. Well, they have an algorithm early 2022, I think it was, whenever ChatGPT came out. That stated, it's in the Search Engine Roundtable, I believe, or Search Engine Journal, and you'll find it in there. It talks about an algorithm they already had to detect AI content. And people are like, oh, they can't detect. And my old business partner, Dave Davies, used to always say, if you think you can outsmart 1,500 MIT engineers, go ahead, right? So it's all mathematic. It's not, they don't look at anything like we do. They look at it from math, right? And if your entity structure is the same, your nouns and using your page is the same as a million other documents because it's been written by AI. And by the way, that's going to get far worse because like 60% of the slop on the internet now is AI generated. It's insane. So if you want to stand out, like in life normally, you want to be different, unique, special. You're offering some special insight into things, or, you're just not exactly the same as everything else. And I'm sorry, I got probably a little off track there, but what was the beginning of your question again?
My question was about the usage of AI content because a lot of people are
Yes, yes,
under a
yes.
pressure. So, so
Yes. So writers are always, I'm going to tell you, writers are always better. Google has said it. They don't like it. And now if you take the AI to use to generate ideas or to get a concept or to maybe give you a path of research, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's tools like RivalFlow, which will check your competitors and see where you're missing entities based on what they have, and will give you little blurbs. That's fine if you're using a little blurb. But your actual content needs to be architected well, needs to cover the topic well, needs to be singularly focused because Google wants certainty of page. The design of Google came out of libraries, right? So your website is a book and you have your table of contents as your navigation and your chapters are your books. So if you're reading a book, does your website read well like that? Because sometimes people will put like 10 topics on a page with a big table of contents. It's like, no, break it down. Google wants specific content. It wants to specifically know what your page is saying. So that's a huge part of your content. But on the AI content, there's just nothing really to be gained by it, right? People can detect it. I don't know about you now, but I've read enough of it. I can hear it in my head when it's AI content. And I start looking for the hyphens, right? I'm like, oh,
yes, no,
yeah,
I think I see most of these in the LinkedIn post. I can
yeah,
clearly make it out. So
yes.
I laugh over it, but people are commenting. I'd refrain from going into and saying anything, but I'm just trying to say,
You're like, uh, yeah,
I
and
really
it's
want to
not
say, come on, be original, but I don't.
and
I'm
it's not
refraining.
just the hyphen, it's like it's a strange hyphen. Because when I do a double hyphen, I do them often, but I have a space and two hyphens make the double. But it's a long one connected on both sides. It's always that, right? People did that in the search awards. I judge them, right? They sent in AI written ones, and I'm like, I know your agency. I've given you like high points before, but I just can't for an AI written search award. Like, because it used, you know what it did? It used a lot of language that is not specific to the industry. So it didn't describe things well, right? It didn't have a preciseness to it. And so again, it's predictive text. So it's not writing well, it's mediocre, you know. And Google doesn't think it's quality content. And Google's like, we don't care how you write it. It just has to be quality. And then they say, but AI is all low quality. So obviously they do care. And then you're writing everything that everybody else has already written. So why do they need to index you? And I have a theory. There's been a high increase in crawled, not indexed, and very low number of updates this year. And I think they have started de-indexing pages that they don't feel they need based on quality of content, which AI doesn't. When people say, here's an easier thing. People say we should do AI content. Ask why. Economy of scale. Okay, but Google doesn't need 5,000 pages on something. You might think that, but they don't. So what are you gaining from the quality? Okay, cheaper. But if it's not ranking, is it really cheaper? If it's not converting, is it really cheaper? If people think it's
Okay,
slop when they read it, is it really cheaper? Sure. And
okay,
like I have a Hyundai Sonata from 2005 in the United States. It has 34,000 miles on it, right? They are known to go 300,000 miles, right? All the rest of the cars, most of the cars in the United States die at 150 to 200,000. Now, Hyundai was cheaper than other cars in a similar class, but it wasn't a cheap car, right? Now, some of the exterior stuff, they're a little cheap. but the engine built really well. So don't want to sacrifice the quality for cheap, right? It
Right.
should always be a value based, right? So the Hyundai Sonata, some
Right.
of their, plastic parts fall off, but their engine still keeps going, right? That's the important part. So you want writers who can write good content or take your AI and make it good, not AI slop, because AI slop offers nothing. Doesn't offer anything to the reader, to the user, to Google, to conversions, to anything. It's just, oh, we got content up. You're like, well, that's great. You got content up. And also you could get a manual action. And you know what I've seen from the manual actions? You don't recover. So
So,
so I worked with a site, just real quick, I worked with a site that rewrote all the content. They didn't realize the writers were using AI. I was able to actually put it in ChatGPT and get the exact same article out, which is unusually bizarre, but I did. They rewrote it all. They got the reconsideration request approved, right? Took only a week once we submitted it. Year later, they were still in the same place. They had recovered nothing. They had no new traffic. So
so
what did they gain by going cheap?
So so I know there are a lot of tools which keeps to be offering content, AI content. I still don't understand why with all these things I still don't see content being mass produced, getting able through AI ranking, but there are still millions of tool out there exactly selling their things and people are still buying it. I don't get that.
I do get it from some point. So I'm sure you're in some of the groups I'm in on Facebook or some of the private groups where someone's like, "Oh my gosh, look, I put out 2,000 pages of content and it ranked so well and it just skyrocketed." And I go every time, "Come back 6 months, let us know how it's doing." And they come back and be like, "Hey, it totally crashed," right? Because
Right.
the way Google algorithms work is they don't analyze all your content for quality from the first day you put it up. It has algorithms that take time to run and they have to go through and they have to compare and they have to analyze and they have to do all that, right? So by the time that the decline usually happens, it's usually anywhere from 3 to 9 months. But in the beginning, because it's well constructed, easy to understand for the natural language processor, it goes really quick because natural language processors like well constructed, short, simple, easy sentences, which is pretty much how it writes. That's why it seems good too. Like when you read it the first time, like, oh,
Right.
it's really well constructed, right? Because it's short, it's simple, it's like straight to the point, and it's following the construct of millions and millions and millions and millions of good writers, right? But the problem is Google gets it first, and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. It matches the query. It looks good. It's architected well. It's got headers. It's got link, whatever. And then it goes, oh, but now we're applying the other algorithms that evaluate the content, and that's when you'll see them crash. And they don't always
Right.
crash. They don't always crash. And if you get an AI engineer to help you change the temperature of the writing, which is using less probabilistic words and maybe adding things from other sources, sure, you might be able to beat the algorithm. And I do think there's a couple tools out there that probably do. I know the people that wrote them. I haven't asked them, but I believe that's probably what happened. And I have a friend who's an AI expert. He actually does talks on it and runs the AI Village at DEF CON, the hacking conference here. So he really knows this stuff. And he's like, yeah, you could beat it, but you have to do all this stuff. So by the time you pay that AI engineer to like make it good, you probably could have paid 100 writers to do that for you. And also, writers give people a connection, right, to your site. So if your site's just doing generic content, that's different. But if you're doing informational content, and I know that, like, I love the Atlantic and I love some of the writers from the Atlantic, and I know when they publish a piece, I want to go read that piece immediately because I love what they have to say. It's the context of what the writer offers to the piece that makes it valuable, right? That's why writers become famous, right? If anybody, you would never need a writer ever by name if everything was the same. The problem with AI is all the same based on what it trained on, right? So that model is not going to give you something vastly different. Now you can tell, like, do it in the persona of this or like this. Yeah, I'll do it in country, but it's also something it trained on. And Google CEO got caught about a year ago. He's doing a 60-minute interview, and he's like, "We invented a language with our AI," and the whole AI community went, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "It was in your training. It may have been 1.6% of your training, but that language is in your training because they were publishing their trainings. That's at the time. They can't go outside their training. So what are you offering people at that point? You're not. So you want that context. My podcast partner is also a writer. And we had a site that had bags. I mean, just bags, like shopping bags, plastic bags, whatever. He had to write a content about plastic bags. I said, how are you going to make plastic bags interesting? Because I know he likes to make it interesting. This isn't about AI. And he's like,
Right.
I will. And I read it when he was done. I was like, oh my gosh, you made plastic bags interesting. Like, who care normally about plastic bags, right? But people shopping for these plastic bags to buy in bulk would probably have found that a very interesting article. And that's what your writer adds to the context. They add a reason for people to want to come back to your content because the content offers them something else besides the
Right.
information. Right? And AI just offers you the information.
Right. So you mentioned there are a couple of tools which you think still work. So would you mind telling our audience those tools are?
No, I don't like to promote AI content just because of the potential risks, right? You may be
Fair
the
enough.
one that gets away with it because I don't think that Google applies the devaluations only on the content. It finds
Right.
other things that are not of quality that it has issues with, and then it says, "Oh, we've also detected AI, so we're going to devalue you." But I hate to promote it because also I don't know that it always works. They tell me it does, but I haven't seen their actual stats. So
Absolutely agree. So is
yeah.
there a percentage of human editing does AI content when AI content becomes acceptable?
I don't think there is. I don't think there's a percentage that they look at. Like as Gary said, it needs to be different. And different doesn't mean wildly different. It just means you have to have a human tone to it, a perspective to it,
Human,
right?
human
Like
touch.
my, yeah, like my podcast partner wrote about bags. Yeah,
Right.
he wrote about plastic
Okay.
bags, but in a way that it made plastic bags kind of interesting, or just how he wrote about it. And they found um, that the AI content also, like I said in ads, like the conversion rates are much lower when you're doing ads. So you have to assume also on your website, if you're converting on your website, it's probably also going to be lower. Also, be careful about one thing. I want to advise about this. Ian Laurie put out a post yesterday about a way he's been able to do alt text for images with AI. I have not read it yet, so this is in no way a dig on him because it may have done it perfectly well. But be careful of AI content writing for alt text or images because I've audited sites where I do accessibility. I was an accessibility lead for the federal government for 3 years as well. And the content, let's say it's a boy at a table eating a cookie, right? Your alt text for that should just be like boy eating cookie. That's it. They don't need it anymore, right? Because they have to hear it. It's read to them. And if you've ever listened to a website through a screen reader, oh my gosh, you want to just take yourself out because it's like this so laborious. So I've seen though, because a lot of people use alt text to stuff keywords, which Google has a secret evaluation for, so don't do it. But I recovered a site from that secret evaluation. That's why I know it exists. Um, but it'll say like boy of 8 with brown hair and shortcut eating a cookie at a wooden table in the middle of the kitchen and the person that's listening to the screen reader wants to kill you now because like if all your images say all that stuff, they have to listen to all of that. So they hate you and they hate your website. And by the way, the disability market is massively huge in the United States. Um, so that's why you don't want to do it. Also, Google has that keyword stuffing algorithm that devalues you for it, and manual actions can be triggered as well. And I don't know how it's triggered, but putting in paragraphs of sentences about a boy eating a cookie could probably trigger that. So just be really careful when you use AI to write image keywords, alt text images.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's move to the next session, which is technical SEO, of course, which is the forgotten foundation these days. Uh, uh, so you have said something provocative that I want to dig into. That core updates are almost 90% technical and not content.
Yes.
So yes, so now let's unpack why agencies should care about this. So can you walk me through an example without naming a client where everyone was focused on content and EAT issues, but the actual root cause was something technical that nobody was looking at? And what was the aha moment at that time?
Well, like I already mentioned once, was the one client I was sure they had an update. This wasn't update related, but where they had a break in the head tag and it caused Google to not be able to render their pages. So they therefore dropped 90%. So we went in and found it wasn't an update because it wasn't during an update. And then we were able to recover them. So that was like one of those cases. When it's a specific, I think the reason I know it's technical is because whenever I approach a site from an audit, I look at the technical first, right? That's the first thing we start to fix. But the technical fixes usually take a few months. And by then a core update is often run again and they'll get all their traffic back. So I know that the technical is a massive part. And here's my theory on core updates. So the core update is a garbage sweeper, right? So most of the sites have had these issues for years. Most of these issues are really big, but they just left them because Google never cared. They got their rankings, right? And then it comes in, it goes like this. And we fix those issues and then they go right back up, right? And it's also keyword applied because they don't know whether a site is money or your life, but they know keywords are your money or your life. So if your keywords are your money or your life keywords going to that page, then and the page has those words on it, then they know that that's your money or life page. So it doesn't happen to the entire site. So the first thing you do in a core update is you look what pages dropped and what root term is common among those pages. So one site that I worked on, they had 2 folders that were represented by 2 root sets of keywords. And this was about 60% of their pages on their site. And we went in and there was just some old technical garbage in there that was causing the page load to be very long and the time to first byte, which always has to be fast, to be slow. And there was old code on there that hadn't been updated in years just from a plugin that it wasn't supported anymore. And we removed all that. And within 3 months, while we're starting to work on the other stuff, they get everything back. That was my first one that did like that. So the technical is just a huge part because I think Google's using a lot of resources to crawl your site, okay, and index it and get all the content and evaluate all that stuff. So when it's doing that crawl and render, because there's a crawl process for the raw HTML and the render process for the actual page design, you know how it looks. If your site is like got, broken JavaScripts and images that are a megabyte or 5 megabytes, or I had one site that had 130 megabyte images on their page, right? If your time to first byte is really slow, you're costing them resources. And so I think core updates just go out and go, hey, we need to lighten our resource load. We want to lower how much money we're spending on crawling. We're going to go through all these sites that have had plenty of time to fix their issues and haven't, and then we're going to go through and we're going to knock them down because of them. So not every site has long-term issues, but almost all of them have at least 1 or 2 issues that have been on there forever and just weren't fixed and are really easy to see. It's very rare that core updates are affected by things that are obscure. It's almost always like main technical issues the site's not addressing. And I said my theory is it costs Google a lot of money to crawl and index, so they just want to take down the sites that they don't want to be bothered with anymore because of that. Now, content definitely can play a part, don't get me wrong, because it's a core update. It can be in all the signals. But I think technical is always the main signal, and then there are other signals on top of it. Since we fix everything, when it's taken longer for a core update to come out, the site will get back 110 or 120% traffic. And I'm always like, why is it getting back more traffic than it lost, right? And I finally figured it out. It's because we're fixing the other things. So it got an improvement in quality score overall, because not only were we fixing what it was down from, because it's a core update and could be anything, we fix everything. And it also gets a boost from the ranking signal.
Okay. Now, you have handled major site migrations, penalties, algorithm hits. What's your diagnostic process when a site loses traffic suddenly?
First, to make sure it's an update, or what update. So like when the helpful content update annihilated all those sites, and it's a broken algorithm, it cannot be recovered from. I will not take on a client. I'll charge a small fee to evaluate which update it is. Now, people mostly aren't worried about helpful updates anymore because it's been a while, but at the time they were. And it's a machine learning algorithm that was broken and took all these sites out, and they couldn't recover. And Google kind of eventually let them know that 2 years later at a meeting because people really pushed. But so at that time though, there was a core update on each side of that helpful content update. So I'd have clients come to me all the time and go, we have a helpful content update hit. We have a helpful content update hit. Can we recover it? And I go in and I go, good news. You don't have a helpful content update hit. Sorry, I can't speak. On each side of that was a core update, and you fall under those. You do not fall in the dates of the helpful content. So great, we can recover your site, right? So the first thing you look at is dates, when the updates ran. Was there no update? Well, then it's not an update. I mean, I know Google runs hidden updates all the time, but they don't take 50, 60, 70% of your traffic on those. If you've only dropped 10 or 20%, most likely not an update, even if it happened at the same time. If it happened at the same time, make sure there's not something technically wrong with the site that could have taken it down first. So always rule everything else out first and then you go to the update, and that's how I evaluate it. So.
Okay. And what about site migration? So here is a scenario. There is a site which is existing and client rebrands it and push it to a new domain at 301. Traffic goes up, and a month later, the traffic goes woof, gone. So what do you think happens most of the time here?
That's hard to say because you'd have to do a site history. Did they already have problems? Because when you move to a new domain, you're getting a full new evaluation of that site and its content. So it may have been things over the years that Google stopped caring about. Google doesn't crawl and evaluate every page. If I have a 10 million page site, Google's not crawling and evaluating every page on that site every time it crawls it, right? Every time it does an update. But so your history will show you, did you already have an issue? You just transfer it to the new site. And now because you're a new site, Google has reevaluated everything, and that's why you're down. So like people will contact me and say, well, we want to, do we need an audit now or after we move? And I'm like, no, you need to do it now. Make sure you don't transfer over issues. Do they do their redirects properly? Did the redirects hold? You have to check your redirects, right? Because a lot of times they're not done properly. Did you match your pages to your pages? Did you change your URL structure? So if you had a page on cookies and then you took out the cookie section and you redirect that page to broccoli, Google's not going to give you the link value, right? So you definitely have to check that link value. Did you match your pages? Did the links all transfer? Did your 301s work? If you did a site reorg, did you take all those links that don't have pages anymore and send them to the home page? Well, that'll get them all devalued, right? So if you're going to send a page to a new page because you change your URL structure, it has to either match it or be similar. So you go page to page. If you don't have a page to page match, which means almost the same, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but very similar. You go to the folder level. So if it's about like chocolate chip cookies and I don't have chocolate chip cookies anymore, but I have cookies, oh, that's okay, send it to cookies. But let's say I took out the cookie section, but I have a section on baking. That's fine, send it to baking. But if you redirect that URL to other parts of the site or to the home page, they'll just devalue that. And it usually takes a few months for them to do the devaluation. So that's why it would not happen right away. So those are the things I would check on that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you distinguish between regular technical audits and forensic audits. Now, most agencies probably think they are doing technical SEO when they are really just doing is running the tools. So if an agency owner wanted to upgrade their technical SEO practice from tool runner to forensic investigator, what capabilities do they need to build, or they do need to get the third party consultant all the time?
Truly, well, first you can use the tools for monitoring stuff, so that's okay.
Okay.
But for every small site should have once a year a technical or full audit evaluation, and every large site at least twice a year, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, because a lot of cruft can build up in your site. Like the last question I forgot to add. Did you redesign your site and use JavaScript? Or this page is now still readable by Google? Like the redesign can also completely change the migration. So when I migrate, I try to keep the site and the URLs as similar as possible, and then we make changes, not during the migration process. But it's a similar thing. So if someone does technical site auditing like myself, we see things that a tool definitely will not catch. So this is kind of a crazy story, but it's a real story. There's a $2 billion e-commerce company. I was embedded through a tool company that was an analytics tool. And I sat down, and day 4, I'm looking at analytics, and I'm like, what do those 4 letters mean? That's the 4th most trafficked keyword on this site. I've never heard of that brand. That's weird. It's an e-commerce site. I should have heard of that. And it's not on the site. And so I go to Google, and I'm like, oh, it's porn. They had a security vulnerability that had been on the site for 20 years, had been written about by the guy who started both DEF CON and Black Hat, had been hit by DOJ fine for the vulnerability, never fixed the vulnerability. So because their search was open on their site, their internal site search, when you created a page, it put those words in the title, description, the H1, and the URL. So they had done that with porn, and they had directed 13 million Russian porn spam links to those pages. They matched the content of the page, so Google didn't devalue those links, because Google looks at it on page basis, not a site basis, right? So they were, the man in the middle attack meant if you search for things, they were using that site's vulnerability to raise their own pages, so you would get the porn site, right? So depending on where you work. It's also location based. Like I couldn't see that. I just knew there was a man on middle attack and found it, gave it to the security team. But had I not been someone with my background of looking at sites and seeing vulnerabilities and detecting vulnerabilities, I would not have even looked at that keyword, right? I would not have known that. And your tool is never finding that. I had another site where ads are the most common place for vulnerabilities. So I had another site that was declining rapidly and we couldn't figure out why. And I went to Google Developer Tools and it showed a redirect on the homepage to another page on the site that had been created by a hacker. And they had created it through the ad scripts. So it was running 900 ad scripts, which are actually the scripts to create this redirect and the code. But you don't see it going to the browser. You don't see it. A tool is never going to see it, right? I only see it because I go to Web Developer Tools and it's like, hey, we can't evaluate this page because there's this weird redirect that we see in the code because we look at all the code, right? So when you have someone like myself, Jenny Hazeless is someone also who does forensic SEO. Unfortunately, Alan has passed, but there's a few of us that we're looking at all that stuff, right? We find those things. You're never finding that with a tool ever. And you can train someone internally in your team to definitely be that person, but then you want it to be that person because that person is going to acquire knowledge over time about how your systems work. Also, just JavaScript, pages where pages are like, I'm working with a site right now that some of their pages aren't ranking well. And I took screenshots of all of them with Screaming Frog, one of its best things, because you can just look at all the pages at once. And I find that, some of the page is invisible. Not all of the page, but some of it, because some of it's being loaded through JavaScript. And that JavaScript does not show up because of a lazy loading tool they're using until you interact with the page. Google never interacts with the page, so that content is blank to them. Those are things that someone like myself will see where a tool will never see those things. You have to have a hands-on audit to detect it. It's the only way to do it. So people should do it every year with small to mid-sized sites, like I said, 2 to 4 times a year, big sites, just because cruft builds up, right? A little mistake here, a little mistake here starts to turn into a big issue where you wake up one night and you've lost 30 to 70 to 90% of your traffic, and now you're scrambling because you don't know what to do, right? So it's that's why you need it. Yeah.
And should agencies specialize in technical SEO, or is it a capability everyone needs?
Everyone should understand technical SEO. I think that agencies should have somebody, either third party or internally trained, that they've hired for technical SEO. Because technical SEO is understanding the page load and the scripts and the HTML and the CSS and how that affects what Google gets and sees. And so it just can't be just somebody has general knowledge. You need somebody with some expertise. Now you could train a developer who maybe want to do something else, need more skill set. You could also take one of them and teach them the SEO
Right.
side of the technical, but it's still an SEO thing because you have to understand it from Google's point of view and Bing's. So,
Okay. Now, if you had to pick 3 technical basics that brand and still fails at even in 2025, what would they be?
3 basics. Did you say technical
Yeah,
basics?
3 technical basics which brand still fails at.
I see a lot of the same things on everyone. One, JavaScript is a big problem because it's not JavaScript itself. It's JavaScript that requires an interaction to render. And also lazy loading will delay the JavaScript and part of the page won't show. That's always a huge one. Images are a massive problem because people don't think about it and they think they can just use an image compressor like Smush or Magify, but you can't, because if the image is a megabyte, well, Smush may take 30% off that because it's lossless, or Magify might take 50% off that because it's lossy, but that's still 500,000 megabyte. 500,000 KB image, right? That's massive. So if you have on a page, I worked with this huge publication and their pages were coming in at 100 megabytes, 200 megabytes. Like, why are we ranking? You're not ranking because your images are straight out of your camera. Your camera is like 8K super high res, and it's 134 megabyte image on your site. And the image is like 10,000 pixels, but on the site it's like this big, right? So first you have to adjust your images from the external point of view. You have to make sure that you've compressed them and made them the largest size you need on the site first. Then you can use those tools, because the great thing about Smush and Magify is when they hit the page, if there's not an image for that size, it will actually create the image of that size and put it on the CDN to be loaded. You have to make sure you add the CDN component to their product. But then it's being served closest to people. Now it's the right size. Now you've taken like 2 megabytes off your page. I mean, I see pages regularly that are 10 to 30 megabytes on every page load. Like, that's just not good, because we think, oh, you're on high, you're like, oh, it's page is faster than me. I have friends still in the SEO industry living in rural areas who have like almost basically dial-up speeds. Not quite that bad, but they're pretty bad, right? So Google's testing is at slow 4G, Nexus 5X mobile. So if your site doesn't do well in slow 4G, Nexus 5X mobile, then you're failing in Google's eyes on your page load. So you definitely, not just CWVs, but actually just the load itself. So anyway, so that's 2, and then 3, internal linking structures are always horrible. People just don't do internal linking properly. Internal linking is one of the most important things, because Google is taking that information to tell it what the site's about and what the next page is about. And so the text that people use, failure to use alt text on anchored images, lack of internal links just completely. There's always 20 to 30% of the site that's orphaned pages or only has one link to it on every audit that I do.
And do you think the site speed still is a ranking factor?
So I was so mad when they changed that. So site speed, before it was CWVs, I got a site 250,000 new visits a day. It was 22 million a month on just improving their site speed, right? That's before CWVs came out. CWVs, I had a site that went into the CWVs perfectly fixed, had been terrible, perfectly fixed, was great, scored perfect, still only got 12% lift. I was really sad. So is it a ranking signal? It is, but in a weird way. And I can only do this from anecdotal evidence. I don't have a way to test this, but I do believe this is true because I've seen it happen exactly the same over different clients. I had one client who loved ads, just loved ads, loved to put as many ads on a page as he could. Put 13 ads on every page. You name an ad, he had a sticky, a less sticky, a video, or whatever, right? And I'm like, my title to him one time was, "We have to break your ad addiction," right? So we clean it all up. We get it down like 4 to 6 ads per page. He get all his rankings back, and then he wouldn't have me work on it for a little while because I was just there to like improve and work for a couple months, and then would go off on my way and come back. And then, but I'd watch it, and all of a sudden it'd be going down and down. And the last time it went down like 30% over like 3 days. And I'm like, "Did you put the ads back on the site?" Because I noticed a couple. It's a very large site. There's no way for me to tell without asking. And he's like, "I did." And I go, "When did you put them on?" He goes, "This week." And so I've noticed that with site speed, or CWVs, we call them CWVs, the CWVs, there's a devaluation factor. So I don't think Google will admit to it, because you could hack a site to make it slow to Google. So I don't think that Google admits it, but I've seen this repeatedly with people who use ads. We'll clean up the ads, they put the ads back on the site, and within days, they lose 30, 40, 50% of their traffic. So it's not an update that's doing it. And we know that the CWVs are checked every day. So they put it on and then it goes down, and then we take it off and then it goes back up. So I do think there's a devaluation factor in that. Also, in time to first byte, which isn't officially listed as a CWV, but is part of it, I got it from a Google engineer that if your time to first byte is slow, they will just abandon the crawl altogether, or they will just come infrequently, because they assume if your time to first byte is slow, everything will be slow, and they don't want to waste the resources. So time to first byte needs to be under, they want it at 80 milliseconds. It can go as high as about 600 milliseconds according to their documentation. But after that, you're really testing whether they will crawl your site properly or crawl it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Off to my last question, which is you've been offering LLM visibility audits as a new service. So can you walk us through what that actually involves and what you are finding? Is this a real revenue opportunities for agencies, or is it too early?
I think it is from a technical point of view. So not from visibility trackers, which again, we talked about, you and I could put in the same prompt and get different citations, right?
Right.
But it is your site technically capable of getting read into the large language models? Will you be able to be seen? Are they finding that? Like, I put up pages for a new podcast that one of the clients is doing, and they're in the AI overview 2 weeks later, because the pages are constructed properly, and we have the schema, and we don't know how much they use schema, but we know that OpenAI uses schema at least for shopping, so probably use it for other things. But they're in there, and there's a full overview with citations from other things, including the YouTube channel. But just the YouTube channel alone didn't do it. It wasn't until we put the pages up on the website. So you have to make sure with visibility just means not I'm auditing your visibility, I'm auditing your ability of your site to be crawled and ingested into the large language model.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, I think
So,
it should be an offering. I think it's way
so,
more important than the other types of things people are offering with large language models.
okay. So to rephrase, you are what you are offering is not LLM visibility, but LLM readiness, right?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a better way. I think at the time I just said visibility because there wasn't a word for it. So, but yeah, readiness would probably be a better visibility readiness, maybe probably be a better word for it. So yeah.
Right. Okay, Kristine, this has been one of the most substantive conversation, and let's wrap up with some final thoughts. You've been through many podcasts, so what's the question you wish podcasters would ask you that nobody ever does, and what
uh,
and what would you answer to that?
I don't think I have an answer for that one. No, probably don't. Because I mean, we cover what you wanted to cover, so and I think that we covered it well. Hopefully, I didn't talk too much. I tend to go geek down the
No,
rabbit hole a little bit.
I
uh,
love
but
having these conversations. Definitely.
oh, good, yeah. No, I think everyone, all the podcasts I've done, everyone's really been kind, and the questions have been good. So I know you probably have people with good answers to that. I don't think I have one, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay, so with that, we came to the end of our show, and thank you for bringing the forensic rigor to this conversation. And of course, you have brought clarity and reality to topics that are often misunderstood our industry, specifically technical SEO. And once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, and to our reader, this has been the Agency Insider Show. I'm Navneet Kaushal. Until next time.
But the core update is a garbage sweeper. Most of the sites have had these issues for years. Most of these issues are really big, but they just left them because Google never cared. It's very rare that core updates are affected by things that are obscure. It's almost always like main technical issues the site's not addressing. And I said my theory is it costs Google a lot of money to crawl and index, so they just want to take down the sites that they don't want to be bothered with anymore because of that.
You have mentioned that Google AI Overview essentially do what Google penalize others for scrapping and summarizing content at scale.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They're totally doing what they tell other people they can't do. Google has come out and said all AI content straight out of the box is low quality. If they have a million pages that all have the same basic entity structure, why would they put you in there? And since AI content can never write outside of what it's trained on, it will always have the entity structure of what already exists.